Okay, so here we are, we're coming to a stop. So we're in manual mode, first gear right now. Okay, so here we are. This is in drive. So I'm accelerating, I'm accelerating, I'm accelerating. I'm gonna let off the gas now. Okay, so see how it's idling in first gear? I'm gonna push the gas. We're not moving, we're not moving. Now we're moving. So you see what it's doing when it's in first gear in drive? It's just coasting. This is nothing. Right now I'm pushing my foot a little bit, nothing, still nothing. Okay, now we're moving. Okay, this is just keeping my foot at the same spot. Let go, and it drops. So that's first gear. So now, let's see what happens when we lock the torque converter, because everyone's like, oh, lock the torque converter in first gear. So here it goes. Okay, so now we're locked, torque converter in first gear. I don't want to push it too hard. I let go. Oh, look at that, it still drops with the torque converter locked. So the torque converter does not prevent the slipping. I let go, it still does that. So I'm going to unlock the torque converter now just so I don't hurt it. Now we're going to throw this into second, because that's starting to get a little tiresome. It's the same thing, we're going to go fast. I'm going to let off. And see how it just drops? All this is dead. This is play. This is not moving. Now we're moving. So that is what happens when we're in drive and things like that. So only when we're in like third gear is when second does the things that we think it's going to do. Alright, so to help clarify, here is the valve body diagram for the AW4, and I only have the engine braking stuff highlighted. So here we can see that the only time that first gear has engine braking is in that 1-2 position. That's where that first reverse brake comes into play. In selection 3 and selection D, it doesn't have that, so we're going to get this weird free spinning thing that I was just showing you. Now if we move over to second, second has engine braking in the 1-2 position and the 3 position, but not in drive. So that's a little better, but still not great. And then we move on to like third gear. That'll work in drive and in third, but you can't physically select third while you're in first, second. And same for overdrive. Overdrive only works in D, so that's the only time you get that. So hopefully that makes a little more sense on when you can get engine braking and in what shift position. This is stuff inside the transmission that is not electronically controlled, so we can't easily mess with this stuff. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Okay, so here's an example where we're in manual drive and this is third gear. So when we give this gas, we're going 3K and then we let off. See how it kind of drops, but not all the way? It only drops down to 2, but the vehicle slows down a little bit. So this is what you would normally expect. When you get on the gas, you're on the gas. When you let off, it kind of just coasts. But it doesn't do that in second. So right now, you can see we got RPMs going. We're like 40 miles an hour. I'm going to put it into second gear. Okay, so if I let off the gas, notice how it just drops to nothing? I have to put my foot all the way in like that to move. I let off, and it just goes down to nothing. I could probably safely put it into first gear, and it's not going to do anything. So I'm going to put it into third now. You see how that happened? So let's get up a little faster. Alright, so here's 50 miles an hour. Now we're going to put it into second. So I'm off the gas, second. So the RPMs didn't shoot up, they went down. But when you hit the gas, it'll catch up. Put into third, same thing. Now, here's an interesting thing. We're going to put it into fourth gear. I'm going to lock the torque converter. And now notice the RPMs went down. If I unlock it, put it into third, lock it again, she starts to slow down. Just gonna take this turn here. But that's the thing I'm trying to explain here. This first gear does that, but when you let off in drive, it just drops. So we're gonna do that thing we're not supposed to. We're going to lock the torque converter in first. Okay. So you see she's moving. I'm going to let off. Still drops, no engine braking with the torque converter locked. So only when we're in first, second do we get engine braking in first, and only when we're in third or first, second do we get engine braking in second. So to show that off, I'm going to drop the position down to third. Oops. Okay, hold on here. Okay, so we're in second gear while we're in third. So now when we let off, you see how the RPMs don't drop? See how they're up there? I give it gas and it's right in there. It doesn't drop to 1K. So this is in third gear. That's what that second coast brake activated. So if we get up here, we're up to 3K and I let off, we got plenty of engine braking and it doesn't drop. Now, let me get to the next spot here. So you notice in third gear, it still drops like that, but you know how second doesn't. So now, okay, so we can grab second, and then here, we're at 3K, we let off, nice coasting. Let me get around this turn and I'll show you. Okay, so now we're going to bring it up to 3K. We're going to put it into drive. Okay, so we're into drive now. Now I'm going to let off. See how it drops all the way down? If I hold my foot here, the engine goes up, but we're not moving yet. Now we're moving. But yeah. And I can show you again. Lock up the torque converter. There's the torque converter in second in drive. She goes. I let off. Still free spools. So the torque converter does not control those brakes. The shifter has to be moved. So, just thought I'd show that. But yeah, like for instance, so here we are in third. Let me get past this car real quick. So we're going 45, right? And all of a sudden, hey, we're going to shift into second gear. Nothing happened. Hey, we're going to shift into first gear. Going 35. Nothing happens. But if I hit the gas, the engine will just skyrocket. But we're not moving. We're still not moving. Because of those, that first gear brake is disabled. So the nice thing is if you throw this into first gear on the highway, you can't blow your shit up. But the torque converter is not the same as those coast brakes. And it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. So there you go. Hope that explains a little bit. Okay, so we're in the heat. We got the Nifty shifter over there, and I wanted to show a different type of mode. So I thought of a crazy idea where you can shift your vehicle manually, and you don't need to add a single thing. All you got to do is plug that in, and it does the smart work all by itself. So you figure, oh, well, how the heck do you choose your gear when you don't have any switches or joysticks or anything like that? Easy. You already got one right here. Huh? This guy? So we are going to use the vehicle shifter to choose gears. And that sounds like, well, what's the point? Well, here's the problem. With this 1-2 selection, most of the problems that people have are in this selection right here, is they don't want it to upshift or they don't want it to downshift or it's not in the gear that they want it to be and they want it to hold. Well, part 2 is that if you want engine braking, you need to be down here anyway. So you got to move this thing regardless if you want that off-road engine braking. So if you got to move this, why not use it as your shifter? So, where's the magical thing that switches between auto and manual? Right here, the power comfort switch. A lot of people don't know what the damn thing does anyway. When you throw it in the comfort, it just it upshifts earlier. It locks the torque converter in third for better fuel economy and stuff like that. So all it really does is change your shift points a little and change the torque converter lock up a bit. So if you never use comfort and you don't like it because you like power shifts, you like when it shifts, at a higher RPM, you feel like you want to really run around, we can use this switch as the input. So I can do this one of two ways. I can have it so that the switch makes sense. So this is power and this is manual mode. So to show you that, here's our red and green. So here's power mode. Here's comfort mode, or comfort, which is manual mode now. So when you're in comfort, you're in manual. Or if you want to switch this around, I could do some board modifications so that way it lights up in manual mode. And when it's off, it stays in power mode. Or I could add a switch so that if you want it to stay in comfort or in power, regardless of this switch, you can do that. So basically there'd be a switch on here to be, okay, do you want your TCU stuck in power mode or comfort mode? And then this way, on is manual, off is regular. So let's show you this. So right now we're in manual mode. We're gonna bring this down a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna take our shifter over here. I don't know if I can get you both in here. Stupid phone, come out and work with me. So we're gonna throw this down. Right now we're into to drive. That's our normal business. Now we're gonna put it into third. Oh look, we're in second. Let's put it into first second. It's in first. No matter how fast you spin the engine or what you're doing, this will always be first. So first second is always first gear, and you have engine braking in first. When you go into third, it'll always be second, and you have engine braking for second gear in the third position. So you still got engine braking, and then when you're ready to go up more, you go to drive, and you're in third, and third has engine braking in third and drive. So there you go. We've got engine braking on everything and a completely manual setup, and you didn't have to add a thing. This is completely factory compatible. Ready to go back to normal mode? Okay, there you go. You're back into to normal. Manual? Okay. So that way, no matter what you do, this is always third, this is always second, and this is always first. Tell me that's not freaking cool. I really wanted to show that off because I thought that was magical. But what about the people that don't have this power comfort switch? I don't know the exact year cutoff. It's somewhere in the OBD1 HO years. I don't know if it's, 93, 94, 95, somewhere in that general area. You're not going to have this switch anymore. So what do? You'll have to add a switch. So you could add something near the shifter or, wherever the heck you think you could put a switch. You put your auto manual switch and it'll still work. It'll still work the same as this. So all you have to do is add a switch and then you can use the factory shifter. So I think that is really freaking cool. And I might be using this mode, honestly. I'm thinking about getting a shifty joystick, John. But as far as this goes for an off-road mode, this is killer. I really like this. Okay, back on the talk of interesting modes and things that you could do. Someone suggested maybe a modified automatic mode. So you don't have to pick the gears. The unit will pick the gears for you. But what it does, it's the best thing I could call it is an off-road mode. Basically, it'll hold the RPMs a lot higher. So it's like power mode, but on crack. So the engine will always be like a minimum of 2,500, 3 RPM, 3,000 RPM, something like that. Basically, it'll wait a lot longer to upshift. So if you're like trying to mess around in the sand or the mud or whatever the heck you want to do, and you want to keep them engine RPMs and you don't want it to upshift on you and lose all that power, then you can set an RPM point that you want it to be at, and it'll only shift after that point versus the TPS. So we could use the TPS as well. It'll take a bit more math and thinking and trying, but it's an idea. So here's the serial output that Gen 1 guys can get. So we have our module ID, we have our TPS, the output speed RPM. These are the inputs, these are the outputs, and these are the error codes. So like for instance, when I turn off the power comfort switch, see that 1? They're all inverted, which is kind of dumb. If I press the brake, you see that other one turns off. The TPS is a number though. It is from 1 to 7, or 0 to 7. And if you push it too hard, it gives you an error. See that? That's the TPS error code because it thinks it's not connected because it's inverted, because everything's friggin' inverted. But we do have TPS. It's a little slow. It only updates every quarter second, so that's kind of annoying. I could manually tap it if we do decide to do that. So if that's a feature that sounds interesting in Pro mode. We'll tap the TPS for manual input and get like a proper analog range instead of just these steps. But that's an idea. So with the with this off-road mode, it'll still shift for you. It'll just it'll wait a lot longer to upshift. So if you only have a little bit of TPS, it'll shift at maybe 3K. If you have a little more, maybe it'll shift at 4. And if you're really planning it, it won't shift until it hits 5K or higher, something like that. So really all it's doing is it's raising all of your shift points to, you know, that higher RPM band so you can really get that wheel spin. So that's an idea, is an off-road mode, like a semi-auto or, you know, something like that mode. So that's that. Next up is inputs, because we're still trying to figure that out. I don't really like that arcade joystick that I was using, the 1 through 4 manual gate. It's too big and bulky and expensive and hard to find, and they're just, So here's the thing right here. It's a small 4-way arcade joystick. It's only 15 bucks, real nice, and it's also pretty damn small. So we should be able to fit that in a lot of places. I'm going to order this and see what I think of it. But here is the idea for the sequential idea. So you'll push it left for auto mode or left again for manual mode or whatever. So this will change modes. Forward to upshift, back to downshift. So you can go upshift, upshift, downshift, downshift. And if you want the torque converter to lock up, you pop it right. So torque converter on, torque converter off, upshift, downshift. And through the code, I'll have the torque converter unlock while it's shifting, then relock so it doesn't damage it. And when you want to go back to manual or auto mode, you just pop it back over. So that'll do everything you want in one nice little package. But if you don't like a goofy looking red ball, I found something else that might be even smaller and cheaper right here. So here's a nice little black ball looking thing. And the thing about this is that it's gated. So what that means is with this guy, you could swivel it all around. You can just go in circles, and that would mean that you'd be like pushing the auto mode and the down mode and things like that. And I'd have to write some code so you're not inputting multiple things at once and dumb stuff. It would only work when one's pushed rather than all of them. So to fix that, they make a gated version where it is only a 4-way. So it'll only go this way or that way or up or down. You can't rotate it like this because there's like a cross in the middle that it won't let you do that. I don't know if they have a good picture of it. Here you go. It's got a gate right there. So you can only go this way or that way. You can't spin in a circle because it's locked. But this one's a little smaller. It looks like it's got quite a bit of movement on there, but I think it'd be really fun, really interesting to try. So you could, you know, surface mount that somewhere. It'd be a small little sucker. I don't know where exactly I would put it. I'd probably have to make some kind of plate. But, you know, just a little joystick thing that you can just like poof, 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 thing like that. That's an idea. You know, you could, if you don't like your coin slot, you could probably put it somewhere in there, or, you know, something like that. Might be an interesting idea. So I'm going to get both of these and see what I think of that, because that looks kind of cool. So that's that idea for some different inputs that I can include, so that way you guys don't have to go hunting for something. I can include a factory thing. Now, we can also go a lot simpler to just, you know, straight up switches. So you could use something like this, like a 2-way rocker switch. So if you want to downshift, you can downshift. You want to upshift, you upshift. This would be momentary, so that way you click it and it would let go. Click it, let go, thing like that. So that way you can just upshift, downshift real easy. And I might even make some kind of custom holder that, you know, snaps onto the bar, because I like this a lot. Because when you're pushing here, you're like, okay, we're in gear, push that. If you want to shift, you know, it's right at your thumb, fingerprint. Stuff like that. It's real easy to pop into that and do what you need. Someone mentioned maybe putting it forward so your fingers could do it, but I don't know. When you're trying to like grab this, you'd have to pick up over it, and you know, you don't want to accidentally pop it. I think the thumb forward backwards is way easier. So that's an idea if I can find this. And maybe I could make this the only switch and have what we would call a semi-auto mode. So how this would work is, say you're driving and you don't like the gear you're in, you want to downshift, you want a little more power, you push this, okay, we're downshifted, now it's in a semi-manual mode. So it's going to stay in the gear that you wanted until either maybe a timer, or if the TCU finally picks the gear that the switch is in, it'll go back to auto mode kind of thing. So say you're climbing a hill and it's stuck in fourth and you don't like it, you push this down, downshift, okay, now you're in third. And it's in the manual mode. When you get to the top of the hill or whatever, and you push it back and forth. Now it matches what the TCU is doing, and it's back into auto mode. Something like that, maybe. There'd be like a specific timer, like stay in manual mode for at least a minute, or something like that. Or what we can do, you hold the button down, you know, for 3-4 seconds or whatever, it'll go back to auto mode, something like that. So with just 2 inputs, we could figure out a way to do that. So that's an idea as well, if you want more of a simple, you know, switch solution, thing like that. So that's an idea. Again, there's lots of different things we can do, all kinds of logic and stuff. We just got to find what we want, what we think will work well, and, you know, go from there. If you don't like a switch per se, and you want more of a toggle, like an in-between, we could get one of these guys, like a toggle switch like this. So downshift, upshift, you know, thing like that. Down a gear, up gear, hold 1, 2, 3, we're back into auto mode, things like that. Or like this, have this as a setup, so okay, now we're in manual mode, and we'll flip this back and forth. I can't do that because that will make the winch work, but you get the idea. So we're in manual mode, downshift, upshift, okay, we're ready to go back, and flip it down. So that is another idea, okay? So we've got toggle switches, we've got momentary rocker switches, we've got, you know, joysticks, things like that. We've got the manual gated shifter if you want the full effect for the full manual, which again, you could also put a switch on there for the TCU to lock that up, things like that. So yeah, there's lots of different things we could do. It just depends on what you're looking for. But I kind of like this as a, you know, just a bare bones, a real simple idea for this. So yeah. That's another thing we could do for the switches. If you did want some kind of torque converter control, maybe like hold it back for, you know, 1, 2, 3, it'll lock the torque converter. Hold it again, and then maybe it'll unlock the torque converter. And then forward would be auto mode, manual mode, something like that. Maybe, I don't know. Again, if you got an idea, anything at all that you'd like to see, you'd want to do let me know how you want this to work. And I can probably do it. And as a fun fact for Gen 2 guys, we have more ranges, so we actually see everything. In Gen 1, we only see first or third. And if we don't see either of those, we have to assume it's just one of the other positions. So if we turn this off and go into here. So these are the 3, like the 2 things we got. We have the 1-2 gear input. Come on. We have the 1-2 gear input, and we got the D3 input. That's it. If we come over to here, this is the Gen 2 guys. We have our 1-2 over here. We have our D3 over here. We have drive. We have reverse. So the only thing that we don't know about is park or neutral. But everything else we can figure out on our own. So, you know, if you have ideas for drive versus reverse or anything strange like that, the Gen 2 guys have more options. And I'll probably add a manual sense so we can see all these inputs with that, since we don't have data to play with. So I'll try and give you guys something to work with as well. We can get our TPS signal, so you know we can do some basic stuff. And if I figure out which input or output speed sensor to mess with, we'll include that and try to add a fooling circuit and stuff like that. It's gonna be you know, a lot of messing around and testing, but these are all ideas, stuff to think about. Right now, the only problem I'm having with Gen 1, which I haven't hooked up the oscilloscope yet, is that for some reason, with the REM plugged in, we lose our data. So this is kind of a problem. I need to figure out why, because they're both on the same data line circuit. They're both pulling it high, but the REM works. And I'm pretty sure I'm using the same basic circuit that the new Nifty shifter is using. Where the fuck are you cuck? Okay, so for instance, we're almost plugged in, so you can see over here, the fucking phone would focus. See our TPS works, and we come over here and plug this in. Actually, you could hear it snap. But now, it's like broken, it lost data, it's not finding anything, there's no information shown. But if we go over to here, check out the TCU, that updates properly. So I need to figure out, like, obviously the data line is still doing data line stuff. I bet you that the protection resistor I put in there is probably not the right something, and it's not working. So yeah. That's really the only thing I'm looking into right now for Gen 1, but besides that, I'm pretty darn happy with the capabilities here. I'm really digging this. Okay, so we got this bad boy on the bench, and we're taking a poke here. So if we look at our schematics over here, you'll notice over here on the buffer that I have an inline resistor here. Now this is a current limiting resistor because this buffer cannot take over 5.5 volts. And the more power over VDD that this takes, the more current that the protection diode inside is going to have to sink. So at 6 or 7 volts, it's not bad. When you start to get up to 12 volts, it's kind of bad. When you get to 14, that fucker wants to pop like no other. So we need a current limiting resistor that'll keep the diode from popping. The only problem is whatever weird stuff this is doing while we have a pull-up resistor and this current limiting resistor, it makes some kind of like backwards voltage divider basically. So if we come over to the picoscope now, if it'll work. So here we have the blue line is the line on the TCU. You notice that this is a 1 volt low and a little under 4 volts high. Now when I mess with this resistor here, the 5 volt pull up, this changes the power of the blue line. So when I was at a 1K, this was at like 5.5. When I was at 2.2, it was at 4. I'm at 3.3 right now, and it's like 3.7 volts. The high isn't too bad because our switching voltage is somewhere around 2 something. So as long as we're above 3, we're all right. But it's the low voltage that's really close to our threshold now. But anyway, so we're going to take our other probe, and we're going to probe the side that is on the buffer side. So we're going to probe the buffer side and see what that data line looks like. So if you notice, it's an exact duplicate, but it is it's shifted up. So you see how that low is even higher? It's like 1.5 volt low, and the high's a little higher, which is fine. So that's what the buffer is seeing. And when I had the 1K, it was at like over 2 volts for the low. So it wasn't going to work. So what whoa, that's my finger. But yeah, we have 2 options basically. We can change the pull-up power, which is not the best solution because when you add another scanner on board, that pull-up power is also added to the pull-up power here. So if it's over that, then this will stop working. So the other thing we could do is try and mess with the current limiting resistor, but if you go too low of a value, it's not going to do its job and it's going to pop anyway, so what's the point of having it? So I'm at like 560 ohms right now. Okay, so yeah, we're at 470 ohms right now. I don't really have anything much smaller. I could do a 150, but I don't think that's going to cut it. So yeah, I guess we could run the 3.3, and as long as the REMs aren't pulling too much, then that should work again. Still a little but what are you gonna do? Okay, so I finally got the case installed, so we can see what it looks like mounted in there, and that's fine. Yeah, I can move that thing all about, put it where we need to. Should be all right. And I don't know if you can tell, but I drilled little holes in there just to see the LEDs, see if that was any easier to indicate. It's not perfect. It would need some kind of something or other to keep the holes separate, but it works. So here we are right now in the manual mode, and with the REM plugged in. So changing the that data resistor fixed that problem. So let's turn this off so you can see what I'm talking about here. So you can kind of see the one hole. So this is first gear, and then if I can wiggle that up, that's second gear. And if I wiggle it again, that's third gear. Again, they're not properly separated, so it's a little hard to tell. But our manual thinger's working just fine. Cool. So that's our power comfort mode. Let me turn that on, and then it'll go back to regular. So, excellent. That is working pretty well. I'm excited. So look at that. Right there, we now have a factory setup ready to go. plug in this little device, and now your power comfort switch can be used to manually shift your gears. Cool beans, partner, cool beans. So as a quick aside, I've just been messing around with the this guy. The cool thing is we can get data out of our TCUs, so we can measure things and mess with it. I actually made an Arduino program that fakes the road speed sensor on the transmission, so that we can plot the speed that it's going and the gears. I haven't really gotten to test it much yet, but yeah, it's just interesting to see you know, the gears change and all that stuff, and you know, the brake switch and all that crap. So we're just messing with the data. I haven't actually pulled much of the data from the transmissions yet, so I'm learning to see what and all it really does when it shifts, and hopefully we can learn some stuff with the program that I wrote. But yeah, down here it's just it's actually just a transistor hiding in there, and all that's doing is bringing the road speed sensor down to ground, because it's held up to like 6 volts, and then you bring it to ground for the pulse, and the pulse is every it's not a 50% duty cycle. I think it's like a 25% duty cycle signal. And just by changing the length of time, you can change the speed and stuff like that and get a nice long reading, and just messing with some stuff. But there's a lot of possibilities here, man. The data logging and just having access to the data stream in general is making these really useful. Lots of things we can do with them. So I'm going to experiment with that. I also got the first OBD2 version together. So here's the it's a slightly smaller board. But in the next revision I might change the size a little bit or whatnot. But that's the connector for 98 to 2001. I also have a 97 connector. Haven't tried yet, but yeah, it's looking pretty good. So we'll have to see how these do. I got to test this in vehicle to make sure it works before I send them out and make sure they're good to go. Maybe add some code. I got some joysticks on the way. But just a real quick update of what's going on right now. Yeah, it's been a slow project, but yeah, if you guys got some ideas, it might be able to help speed up development time. So let me know.